Hey, it's Dan Kahn from CNCF. First, I just want to thank you guys for a great event and congratulate you on graduating yesterday and also on Open Metrics today. And I'll start with a softball question.
Embargoed?
Which is, I believe that Prometheus is the, other than Linux, the highest velocity open source project in terms of number of contributors, number of contributions, number of issues, and such, that was not originally backed by one company. And we can argue, oh, SoundCloud, okay. Any views on that? Any thoughts on what got to this place?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I was there in the beginning when it wasn't. I mean, it started kind of at SoundCloud, kind of in our free time. But even when SoundCloud funded the development, they didn't do it to do open source. They let us do it, like we took our liberties there. I think it is a good thing and a bad thing. It's good in the sense that it was pretty independent from the beginning and everyone kind of agreed, yeah, we want to make this very independent. It sometimes also means that, you know, it's being led by people from all kinds of different companies wanting different things, political problems, but also sometimes there is not one big company with the interest to fund you know, long-term ongoing maintenance. I mean, we get that a bit from companies like Red Hat and others. But one company that feels like they own it so much, like Kubernetes with Google and so on, that they also spend resources on, yeah, long-term maintenance, but also programs such as, I mean, you'll maybe see it again on this stage. The topic was touched briefly yesterday. I mean, it seems like we're all guys again. And you know, I think this problem is even more challenging when you're kind of more of a voluntary group and you don't have like $1 billion company saying like, okay, here's a lot of money to try and address that. And of course, that's not the only problem, but yeah, I think anyone else want to talk more about that point? But otherwise, I mean, I think I'm pretty proud of where we got, given that we really started out as we just want to solve our own problem. We don't have any plans for this to go really anywhere. Hopefully we can use it at our next employer, and now everyone's using it. That's really crazy.
I think that's maybe actually why it was so successful, because it was really solving a need, like, and it's very much an engineering product and not something that's driven by some company. Okay. Should I repeat that, or did everyone get that? Yeah, so I think that's very, very much why Prometheus is so popular, and also because of I think we should always thank Brian for this. That sometimes it takes a while to discuss things, but everything's super consistent and coherent. Yeah, and I think that's why so many people love PromQL, for example.
Do you still have tokens?
A question over here. Right here.
I think yesterday, I don't know who was it, talked about the initiative to get more people on board, to get better onboarding for Prometheus for users, I think. Could you please elaborate a little bit about it? I think one thing is documentation, another thing will be simplify some things.
Yeah, that was me mentioning it. So one of the things we do, basically, CNCF is funding a documentation push, which Luke is doing, who can now wave, and you can all thank him. Yeah. So just to because most of what we have is more like a developer reference and not really documentation, which you can use to run stuff, and just fleshing this out more for like easing this initial learning curve. And the other thing is just to create more stuff which like actually lays down like our philosophy, our non-goals, our goals, our design decisions we made from there, the engineering trade-offs, and based on that, the best practices. So you have this mental flow of like the first principles where we're coming from, and then you go more and more into the actual implementation of what changes. So you can actually like follow that chain of logic, and this makes it a lot easier for you like to come up to speed with the project and go from there instead of like having to start early. And then also to really try and get people to really answer on the user mailing list. So every one of you, again, you're more than welcome to join the user mailing list and actually answer questions. This also takes loads off of us. And you're also more than welcome to, for example, go into issues and just help people or maybe redirect them to the mailing list. So these are kind of the efforts which we are going through. And also just like reflection between all of us of how we can improve things, make things more welcoming, maybe have a few snippets for like often asked questions or often phrases which you need, which you think can for putting people to the mailing list again and stuff like that.
Well, first, thank you so much for the PromCon. It was amazing. Great job you are doing here, and even with Prometheus. Great, thank you. And the question is, what's next from Prometheus? We talked yesterday a little bit about it. And the second question, if I can do it, is like, is the plan to have some kind of best practice documented? Like we have already used REDs and the forced sign-outs, but there is something planned in documentation, like if I have some kind of customer use case, what can I do? Thank you.
Yeah, never. So for best practices and for use cases, yes, that's exactly what we're currently pursuing. For next goals,
So there is actually a pilot documentation written 2-3 years ago on the bottom left-hand side of the website about various best practices about instrumentation and so on. It's not exhaustive, but there is something there at least.
you have to hold it near.
Well, I already mentioned it in my talk, but scalability tests, we want to give recommendations of how much a single instance can take on a given hardware and maybe post it with every release. That's the only thing I can say.
So yeah, I'm maintainer of the client, of the Ruby client, which is, I believe, the client library which exists for the longest without any rewrite. And like since then, we had like lots of new ideas of like how to structure that. There are like some companies who also want to help with that, but obviously there's a lot of more need to do to like rewrite exporters after like newest best practices or like the client library. So for a lot of exporters, I guess they're like continued incremental changes we need, and we also need more support from everyone to say like what problems you have in mind we can solve.
One thing that I want to do in the next few months is have a better alerting story, have alert history to see which alerts are firing, which alerts are waking you up. Is there alerts that you need to fix that, yeah, and stuff like that. Better alerting story.
And another fun one that I'm starting the process of is the discussion of a Prometheus incubator community contrib like sub-org. So we'll have a GitHub area where we can put more experimental and other community-driven things. I know there's a lot of network engineers that need SNMP data, and there's like no good repo of all the MIB data you need to generate Prometheus SNMP translators, and like people don't know what they have. I've got device X, it's some Cisco router. What metrics can I even get out of that? So we're gonna talk about building this community area for people to contribute to, and also like there's some abandoned exporters that people use, and we want to improve on those and bring them into our best practices. I know somebody just mentioned to me today that they want to do a rewrite and create a new Postgres database exporter, and like that's a really great idea, but it's not something that we as a Prometheus team can bring into the Prometheus org. So we might have a Prometheus community org where more people can contribute to it.
And video meetups. We started Frederick started one, and there should be one very soon after PromCon, right? Because they will. Hmm? No, these are like
this is
on-
like, so I think the first one we did was about a month ago. So we started doing like a just a Zoom call, so the entire community can join in on discussions, and it's just like anyone who's interested in developing on or around Prometheus is welcome to join. The next one has not been scheduled yet, but we will announce it on Twitter again. And
So yeah, there will be a document where you just list what you're interested to see or hear, and then we'll address it in the meetup.
And also just as a reminder, so we have last year's Dev Summit online, and once we are finished with tomorrow's Dev Summit, we will also publish these to also get you like more into up to speed with why we do certain things in a certain way.
And just to provide some general context into the project, at present, like there's 20-ish of us. I don't know the exact number. If you look at the actual effort going in, it's equivalent to 2 to 3 full-time people, somewhere around that at the moment. So that severely limits what we can actually reasonably support. Like we have a moratorium on service discoveries and notifiers because we just can't support what's there, because to a large extent, and I'm also partially at fault of this, just thrown over the wall to some extent. And we're just limited by what we can do. Plus, we've got an ever-increasing support load coming in via user requests and issues. So anything the community can do to help take that load off means we can focus more on expanding the scope.
Next question.
Wait, right here.
Sorry,
Right here.
we have lines.
Hello. Okay. So I hear there's a lot of projects that are being done, and that was going to be one of my questions as well. What's to come? But I guess on top of that is, how are you maintaining that? Is there like a project manager? Are you doing this agile, Scrum, Kanban, stories? Like how are you? But no, seriously, how are you maintaining it to say, okay, by this quarter we're going to have this brand new item to have that release? So that's the serious question. My other question is, what is each of you spirit animal? I was just curious.
So don't take our laughter the wrong way. It was probably just everyone thinking about like the painful process we go through sometimes to reach a decision. So officially, we have a governance. You find it on Prometheus.io community, and then there's a link to the governance document. There's 20 voting team members at the moment. There's a process to add team members, to remove team members. That hasn't happened yet. And then there's a way, we try to make decisions by lazy consensus. You can suggest something, and if it seems that nobody objects or doesn't call for a formal vote, you can just go ahead. If you can assume you have the consensus of the team. If there is a contentious issue, then you can actually, as a team member, bring it up to a vote. And there's, if you want to change the governance itself, there's a 2/3 majority, otherwise it's majority. So there's the formal way of doing it. Of course, there's also, there's just people who are more influential in their arguments or the saying, and others who are like not as active in that team. So of course there's always like the official way, there's a bit of an informal way, but you can also always ask, like, can we have an official vote on this if you really want something to be confirmed? But I think most of the decisions day to day, we just try to do on the like lazy consensus model and vote when it really needs to be happening. Spirit animal, penguins are always nice, I don't know. But does anyone want to add to the first question?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you also follow the mailing list and the IRC channel, it will also give you an idea of what's happening right now. That's a very good source.
Are we supposed to all say our spirit animal now?
Yeah. So the communication. Sorry, I totally didn't go into the communication around the decision. So anyone on the public forums can suggest things and so on. And or sometimes people just file a pull request and see if it gets merged. So those are kind of the venues where it actually happens. But then there's the rules that govern.
The thing if you want to know what the actual decisions are made, you have to star and follow every single repository, plus read IRC in #dev, plus watch the mailing lists, plus Twitter, plus there's no central communication channel. A lot of it's cat herding, really. I'll take great as a compliment, but yeah, it's not a formal thing because, as I said, there's no company here. There's no formal structure. It just kind of, it just kind of happens.
We don't have a we have no product manager. Oh yeah, and so if anybody's seen my, I'm Ben, and if anybody's seen my GitHub, you've seen my cat, and he's kind of my spirit animal.
I just figured mine. It's monkey, because it climbs and it's funny. So who is next?
Should we like all do, or maybe not? But the guy who was. Yeah, the guy who put pretends to write code on his slides, that's my spirit animal.
I like you too, Richard.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, thank you for the hard work you are doing for Prometheus. My question is...
Louder.
Okay, I thought I'm... Okay, yeah. So my question is... is there any official structure, any official list of ownership for each of you? Like, what are your, if I'm touching one part of the Prometheus, who are supposed to reach? And maybe the follow-up question, can you quickly go, each of you, and say quickly in few words, area of expertise, maybe?
So the first question, every single repo has a maintainers.md, and that's where you find that info. For the rest?
Yeah, maybe I can very quickly introduce people. Tom, Cortex, and remote storage. Node exporter, a bit of SNMP exporter. MySQL exporter. Generally, Prometheus things.
Cat herding.
I would say anything that relates to Prometheus and Kubernetes in conjunction is probably your specialty, but also generally, like, you know everything about Prometheus, core maintainer. Oh yeah, Frederick. Oh yeah, sorry. Max, alert manager, right? Brian, everything. But also, I think you maintain like client Python, SNMP exporter, black box exporter, of course Prometheus server.
Client Ruby, procfs for proc system, memcached exporter, HAPoxy exporter, and console exporter.
And you are Tobias.
And I'm Tobias.
TSDB, I guess mostly. I touched, I think, everything at some point, so.
Yeah, Fabian joined, rewrote everything, and then always, left. I didn't want to say it like that.
So, I guess general Prometheus, but now I'm moving focus to the TSDB.
Stuart, alert manager, right? And PromDash. Oh, PromDash! So at some point, Grafana did not exist yet. We needed to build dashboards and to get people at SoundCloud to actually start using Prometheus. And so we built PromDash, and then we hired him as a kind of contractor. Now everything is different. There's Grafana, it's much better. And nowadays, now you. So we can look wistfully back on PromDash. Yeah, I actually built PromDash, the initial version, and then he came in. We have Simon and
Prometheus and alert manager mostly.
And Gautam?
TSDB and general Prometheus, I guess.
Yeah. I'm also, I guess, very general. Yeah.
Did you say you hired him? Or I?
Yeah, we hired him as a contractor initially.
Actually
to kind
get
of
paid to work on Prometheus.
Well, at the time, no, I got
It's a joke, it's a joke.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think. All right.
There's one more. I got it.
So we rely a lot about the node exporter and the alert manager. When will you think about publishing the 1.0?
I didn't actually listen to the question. If you got it wrong.
Tomorrow.
I would.
No, discussing tomorrow. Not ready.
All right, I'm not allowed to say anything, I guess.
No, you can say your opinion.
Okay, all right,
I think on Alert Manager just a lot of stability stuff. I think the feature is pretty rich for 1.0, but I don't think we reached the stability for 1.0. For example, API stability, the clustering library stability. I don't know. In general, more tests would be nice, I think.
Hi. So thanks again for all the work that you've been doing. It's awesome to be here and see everything that you've done. I think it's good to, this is a bit more of an operational question, but I figure that like as maintainers, you'll be in a good place to answer this. So to give you some context on where we're coming from, we're like using Prometheus internally in a small team. We're scraping like a ton of metrics, and it's working really well for us. But we have two operational concerns when opening this up to the wider development team. The first was kind of touched on yesterday with the bomb squad work, which looks super awesome and solves one of the problems for us entirely in terms of accidentally ingesting like very high cardinality metrics and bringing the Prometheus server down. The other thing that we're worried about is people running queries that are particularly bad for the Prometheus server. So we've had people experimenting in a Grafana instance, and obviously you can hit the wrong query and suddenly like you get alerts because you're at a heap and then the thing gets killed. Do you know of any work that's going on to try and limit resource consumption, kind of try and like ring fence resources to prevent this sort of thing from becoming a problem? I can see maybe.
Okay, maybe first the first question. So Brian and I actually have been discussing about kind of like the bomb squad problem in a different way though. So there's already staleness handling in Prometheus, right, which basically tracks every target to do staleness handling. But we were thinking of using the same mechanism to track churn rate of time series exposed by that target, and basically expose a metric for that, and then we could just drop the entire target if that's what we want to do. That would probably be done by a separate system, not within Prometheus directly, but that could be a way to solve that problem. Maybe.
Yeah, there is already, just to mention, sample limit, which if a target exposes more than this, it will hard fail the target, because then you'll notice it rather than the data silently disappearing, which could break things subtly. I'm always a favor of hard breakage rather than silent breakage. Not everyone agrees with me on that. The second point about resource usage. Now, obviously, with Prometheus 2.2, it had a new PromQL, used a lot less resources. We are talking about ways to limit the RAM. Yeah.
Issue 4414.
Yeah.
I've got a branch that actually implements the limits. It just doesn't work yet. Which is my default answer to most questions.
Yeah. Because like one of the things of the rewrite of PromQL, or the refactoring of it, means that it's now possible to do this in a sane way. So it's one of the outcomes in addition to like knocking 2/3 off the cost of PromQL. It just means it's faster to eat up of that memory now.
Yeah, in the very beginning when you said everyone who is kind of involved in anything Prometheus should come up with, I was thinking like actually of Bartek to come up as well, which kind of this could be something that the Thanos querier can solve, because it's an isolated process, right? So if you're maybe trying to...
Can you repeat what exactly? What do you want from me?
So
how can I help?
So the problem is they don't want to have a single query that kills
Query
their
of
Prometheus.
death problem. I think that would be nice for Prometheus itself alone as well. So it touches like both ways. But for Thanos query and Thanos at all, it is more problematic. And actually not only Thanos, but any long-term retention solution, because you have more power, and basically, you know, you don't want to fetch 1 year of data with the raw samples, and you know that would destroy a lot of components. So yeah, we are seeking for the solution for that as well. And yeah, one way would be to have some proxy, PromGuard, whatever thing. There are lots of solutions similar like this, or ideas how to create those. So I'm pretty sure in next weeks or months, something like that will be created.
Won't make it into the next release, but maybe the release after. Next question.
Was me, yeah. I have a question regarding the alert manager. Why you're using the SQLite database and not a real one? Are you planning to change that?
Ouch. Yeah.
It's not a it's not a database, not SQLite underneath. Like it
Not
keeps its
anymore?
own state.
Yeah.
The notification logs and the silences are serialized as protobufs and then written to disk periodically. But that's, yeah, there's no real database. And that's just loaded up when the alert manager starts up and written to when it shuts down.
But it used to be an SQLite in the past.
There have been very different data storage formats over time. But the general question why we don't have a real database is that this introduces another point of failure that can go wrong, right? And alert manager should be as independent as possible. So, yeah. And we don't really care about history in general. Like in doubt, we just notify you more often. So these periodic snapshots of disk are perfectly fine for the purpose.
I think there was still the idea of adding an interface to the alert manager where you could receive all the events that it handles or all the notifications and then kind of store it in a loose fashion somewhere else if you want to, but not have alert manager do that itself.
I mean, you can literally just...
Long-term storage for the alert manager right here.
So,
yeah, you can just do a notifier. Hello. Julius.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I totally forgot about that. I wrote a little thing for Red Hat once where you can point your alert manager with a webhook and then it will just like record all the things and you can buffer. But I don't know if it was it was kind of meant for that use case. I guess. Talk to me later. Yeah.
But like a higher level answer, so generally speaking, like this topic of an event sync and like something where you can, the global state of your outages and everything, that's a real need within our ecosystem, and you will definitely see movement there in like a few months. Maybe not in core Prometheus, but still.
So, yeah, this was actually an item from last year's Dev Summit, just nobody worked on it.
Yes.
Gotham, are you giving a lightning talk? No.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah. So you talked a bit about improving like user onboarding and stuff like that. I was wondering also about contributors, external contributors. I guess you get a fair amount of them, but that most contributions are like drive-by contributions. People do one pull request to fix their specific issue or implement their specific feature, but then they don't really maintain it over time. What are your thoughts about this? What are you maybe doing to improve that? And maybe not just the core Prometheus project, but also maybe less well-known components of Prometheus. What do you think about that?
I mean, a number of us are actually full-time employees to do this work, so that's how that works. But yeah, I mean, the kind of drive-by contributions is why we do have the moratorium on service discovery and notifiers, because people said they were gonna maintain things, and they don't. That's normal. It's how open source works in some way. But yeah, it's not great, obviously.
I think a good test is to ask people to write tests for their implementation, and then usually never return. And if they return, they're probably going to be around for actually fixing bugs later on. I think that test turned out to somewhat true in the experience.
Actually, I've gotten a couple of really great drive-by contributions for like the node exporter. Some people stop in and just like, they made a bunch of improvements to systemd collection and like improving that. And, you know, I get, you know, a lot of good bug reports on the node exporter. Also, some companies do like drive-by. Percona has always been like very good at contributing to the MySQL exporter. And you know they ship a fork to their customers, but they try and every once in a while push their changes back up to the official one.
So we do get lots of good feature requests and pull requests, drive-by otherwise, and bug reports, like the Python parser. Datadog put in a pile of changes to optimize Dash, and they sped it up like 4 to 5 times. That's great to see everyone working together. You also get people who want a feature added, and they're just adamant that it's really, really simple. There's no maintenance cost whatsoever. And those are more challenging.
So I've heard several mentions of the service discovery moratorium. It seems like a fairly core part of Prometheus's appeal, I think, in a lot of cases. Do you see that as a risk currently? Does it feel a bit fragile? I've not seen it be fragile in my use of it, but I don't exercise all the code paths. And kind of follow up, are you looking for people to take ownership, like actually join core maintainers? Okay, excellent. So.
If anyone can help maintain what we have there, that would be great. Like Azure, none of us are Microsoft Windowsy people. So if people can help maintain that, great, and the same with all the others. Because if people are helping maintain what's there, then we can be more open to, well, adding more. Because the whole reason we had to stop doing it was because they weren't being maintained and they were just rotting.
Sure.
And also, how do you test, for example, SD for Amazon? You need to have, it's really difficult. And another thing I want to make, have you looked at the file SD examples? Because we just recently, Simon was working on this, we just recently added a very good, like a very minimal implementation of a Golang client that uses HTTP. So you can adapt it to your use case, it will query anything you want, it will convert it to a JSON file, and you can use the built-in file discovery. So it's really simple, like just literally just a few lines of code and you have it. So you should look it up. It's really nice. It's really easy to implement.
And also the moratorium is basically to prevent cost, like cost and time on our side. So if we get like a hard commitment, which we can trust that someone says, okay, I will implement this, I will maintain it, I will keep on testing this, I have the actual access to that infrastructure, I will give you direct access, or I will do it myself and expose any errors, blah, 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 all these things. So if we get a hard commitment, that makes it a lot easier to like have this trade-off of cost shift, like massively.
Follow-on question to that, does it make... Another question
it's to a follow-on.
Follow-up one to them. Okay,
yeah, so you both have follow-ups?
Okay. Just go.
Toss a coin.
Just go. So would it make sense to pull service discovery out like exporters are pulled out and just have all of service discovery be external to the core?
Exporters are not pulled out. Exporters are part of the design. Personally, like I really don't like the moratorium. I would rather we move to a model where we simply have better criteria for evaluating new feature requests in areas where we don't have enough maintenance, like service discovery and notifiers. I think we would be better project if we had like just criteria for that. And like Brian, you were saying that if we get commitment to maintain it, then that's a criteria that we can accept new things. But yeah, like. The part of the really big appeal for me was that it was batteries included for service discovery, that you didn't need a sidecar to run a Prometheus server.
And also, while you maybe don't need to like pull everything out, if someone were to like invest time in just making this more modular and more testable, of course, like it's not very nice, that would also help, just to like make it more modular and more testable.
Are there currently any plans to drop certain service discovery mechanisms? No plans, I see shaking heads.
Basically, as long as we are in a major version, there will not be a breaking change, period. Okay. Yes, so unless it's marked experimental, which for service discovery, a lot of them are. But still, there is no, like realistically, no.
I think, okay. The other interesting one about service discovery is the amount of stuff it vendors in. It's real. I mean, in Cortex we vendor Prometheus, and that then vendors every cloud provider's library, which is a bit of a exactly like. Spare a thought for Tinder, right? So I mean, I don't know. It's maybe something we should discuss at the summit tomorrow. Like some of them might, be moved external. Maybe I would support that, but maybe not. Ben?
And again, most of the proposed ones, they can also be solved by file service discovery most of the time.
Yeah, and there's always every once in a while somebody brings up, well, can't we use Golang shared libraries and have them be like sort of sidecar, but like loadable? But I don't think does Go even do that yet?
It does, but it will crash.
It has the feature. However, the problem is that they have to be compiled with the exact same binary, which means we need to distribute them. And the whole problem is us maintaining them, so they don't solve any problem that we have, unfortunately.
Yeah, also, the infrastructure for service discovery has broken itself multiple times. So even if we only had file discovery as the only mechanism, that doesn't solve the entire problem within Prometheus. I think Gautam tried like a year and a half ago to become the maintainer of that package, but I think the thread on the mailing list is still open. So if anyone wants to volunteer.
Something as well from last year's Dev Summit and before is we do have a stated, vague, long-term goal of breaking out service discovery as an independent project, because it should work for things other than Prometheus, because it's a pretty handy thing. But we also need to be able to maintain what we have first before we can do that. And in fact, having unit tests or end-to-end tests for that is part of it, so you can help Drassi with that, all the better.
Also, Gotham will have a second lightning talk about this later. Anyone else?
Hi. Do you plan to add something to unit test alerts definitions or rules definitions? Because sometimes our users are not very familiar with Prometheus and they would like to be more confident in what they're doing.
On this, there will be a lightning talk.
Okay, when is the lightning talk? Ah, okay, so stand by.
So I have been thinking a lot about that Prometheus community thing, because it's something that we also do in the Puppet world. But I am wondering what, as Prometheus developers, can you and community of developers can you bring to that community that we could create as a community? Like, could you like provide resources of stuff like that for us?
Ben, pay attention. The question was for you.
What was the question?
So if we build a Prometheus community and we start bringing some repositories, all that stuff, what can you bring as Prometheus developers to that community? Can we hope to get like some resources of stuff like that?
Yeah, so like we like bringing things in. We have accounts with CI pipeline, so that you can get CI pipelines added, and we have all the PromU tooling for like doing builds and publishing binaries. You can now get like a better place to get code reviews and like best practices help on. And plus there's always the promotional thing of like, this is now like a Prometheus community project. I would love to see things like Cortex join the Prometheus community, and other like slightly more established, but are currently external to like the Prometheus project.
And also, I mean, like when we ask people to join the user mailing list, or we like offer to have like specific repositories, all these things, or if we publish stuff or ask people to just like maintain things, these are all really sneaky ways of just grabbing more people. So basically, by extension, or like the inverse of that, is like that we like see this as a mechanism to get new team members. That in this case, we are also like just by default, obviously more willing to extend time to those people. So like that's, I think, one of the primary sources which we have, time. And if we know that if we like put thoughts or concepts or whatever in a brain and know that it'll stay there and actually produce results. That makes it a lot easier on the like emotional, mental level to just extend that time towards people.
Thank you.
There's one.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I still have the mic. I'll hand it to you in a second. Super random question, potentially, or obscure one.
Mike.
Oh, sorry. Potentially obscure question. Is PromU actually required to properly build Prometheus? I've seen tensions on yes and no on that question.
No, GitLab bundles a Prometheus server, and I just extracted the Go build from PromU, and we do it manually in our pipeline to build our own binaries. It's not required, but it's just a handy wrapper for a bunch of Go stuff that you have to do.
For example, it produces completely static binaries, for example, with some flags and stuff. But
yeah, and then for ours, we don't do static builds. We do it dynamic because we include like a whole libc stack with our embedded product.
Hi. So my team, and probably many others here, are trying to encourage our product teams to make more of Prometheus. And I'm aware you have limited time and there are ways of getting in touch with you. But do you have any suggestions for how those of us who want to continue that conversation about helping, for example, developers to make more of Prometheus can stay in touch with each other? By the way, I'm Emily Labram on Twitter, and I've put a call out so that if other people want to solve this problem, we can. I can add you to an email group. But before doing that, I wanted to check if there's anything existing that we could link up with instead.
So currently the users mailing list is probably best. And if like you get a certain velocity and like we just see that this happens a lot or whatever, then we just like create an official new list or repositories or whatever you need. Like it's basically playing in Ben's field.
Yep. Yeah, Prometheus users is the place to start all these conversations.
Okay.
More questions? You're not going to stump them.
Oh, no. I had fun. Rats. No, are there any other moratoriums that weren't necessarily explicitly mentioned here besides service discovery? I mostly ask because it may trigger somebody to go, oh, that's bad, and maybe motivate somebody.
I've personally stopped basically taking stuff from the Python and Java clients. It turns out it's a really bad idea to start having modules for everything and just focusing on the core one plus what's already there because limited time.
Yeah, I mean, Kazi mentioned in his talk that 2.1 and 2.2 weren't particularly stable. And so at that point, we had a temporary moratorium of a month. Yeah, it turned out to be a month. We wanted it to be a week, but where we just said no feature work is being merged. We're only focusing on bug fixes, and turns out 2.3.2 is actually pretty stable now.
There's a moratorium-ish kind of thing, which regards TLS and auth. I was surprised that nobody asked about it yet, because normally in this panel kind of thing, half the questions are about long-term storage and the other ones are about TLS and auth. So the serving components in Prometheus, we so far have taken the stance that we do not want to maintain TLS and various forms of authentication and then a config file to allow you to configure all the possible options for that, and always have just punted on that and said you have put Nginx or some reverse proxy in front of your endpoints and configure all the possible options there. But that also in the end boils down to a time and maintenance aspect, and security then really comes in a way that we haven't seen before in Prometheus, because we try to kind of sidestep and avoid all the security questions. But this is not forever decided. I mean, there are people who really like this. Yeah. So basically, if we maybe Ben wants to mention something about that. Yeah.
Maybe. So we did actually finally go through a full security audit thanks to the CNCF, and everything looked great. But they did say in our security audit that, hey, maybe you should really consider transport security and something. So I've been doing a bunch of research on the side over the last year or so to like what would be the right thing to do, and it's a really complicated space. The transport security, just encrypting the traffic for metrics, is becoming much more simple. There was a lot of stuff for a few years where just the crypto options were a huge problem, but that's kind of started to settle down. We've got good crypto options. The defaults in the various programming languages are better now. That's settled. So I'm going to be working on a proposal to change that. So TLS, boom, done, easy, not a big deal. Auth is now a whole nother problem. We have 2 or 3 different proposals that I have in mind. Prometheus already supports doing basic auth. I hate basic auth. I think it's useless. It's just plain. It's a username and password, but the password is sent in plain text. It's just base64 encoded. This to me is really silly. I don't want to do it. And then there's client cert keys, and that's really great. That's super secure. Really, a lot of people implement it, but it has the problem that now everything that talks to your API service, if it's running the Prometheus client library, also has to use its client cert, and that may or may not be what you want for an API service. So I've been talking to a few different people, and I don't have any great ideas, but we're gonna be talking about that soon, in terms of like what can we implement, and what's the latest thing in the security world to implement granular auth over TLS.
And also this discussion. Yeah, why not? Also, this discussion is actually the initial reason for creating the Dev Summit agenda like 2 months ago. That's literally the first thing I put in as the first spot of the discussion for tomorrow. More questions?
I have one simple. After the experience with 2.1, 2.2, having all these problems, can we expect a different release process that will try to avoid this in the future?
Yeah, better unit testing.
So the hope is to basically, like the moratorium was really bad, so to force people, like everyone self-controls more. There were also like some few human errors in a few releases and such, so yeah, taking better care generally.
And using the benchmarking, as I said. I mean, if it runs on such load that we're putting it through for such a long period, that answers the question, it's stable. I mean, if we run it on a machine that is 160 gigabytes with 160 cores for over 3 days on a constant scraping 3,500 machines, that should be stable enough for release.
But like the fundamental problem we had is that for 6 months, bugs weren't being fixed to a large extent. Like features being added, but was 4 or 5 TSDB bugs and other bugs throughout the system that weren't being looked at. And we hit a critical point where any time any bug was reported, all 7 other bugs were also put on that issue. And that's extremely difficult to work with as a maintainer, because now I can't even tell which bug is which. So that the moratorium is just an emergency stop button, so we can get back in place and get to a better place. And we'll be discussing all of this tomorrow, because everyone hated the moratorium, and hopefully we never have to do that again.
But it worked well.
Learning through pain.
Yeah, I'm standing here and actually asking questions at the same time, so it's kind of weird. But do you have, guys, anything to share to the external contributors, to users who are using your project and maybe asking for some questions, reporting issues? Any advice, anything to share that will make your life easier? Like, I don't know, provide logs or whatever. Anything like that?
Yeah, the debug thing we added to the Prom tool. That is really useful. It will collect really important metrics and Golang profiles, so that should be sufficient. That is very important.
So when you file a GitHub issue, at least in the main Prometheus repo and maybe some others, we have an issue template that already tells you what information to provide and at what structure. And I think unless you really know what you're doing and you have all the context already, please fill out everything carefully. That helps us a lot. Knowing the Prometheus version, knowing the logs, A lot of people just kind of like delete the whole thing and just write like one low effort line that doesn't really clarify what the problem is. And yeah, so put efforts, I guess, into questions and bug reports.
Or even more generic, I mean, just respect the time which we put in, like with respected with your time. Like what he just said, like this low effort line, like this really rings with probably a lot more people than are just standing here. Like if you put in the effort, you're making our life easier, so you're like respecting the time, and on the other hand, you're also like lowering the mental barrier of just interacting and really investing that time back into you. So you're actually helping yourself. And also while like filing a really good bug report, sometimes you just realize, oh, that's the issue, and you don't even file it because you realize it, because you did the actual like proper research and ask yourself, so what would they be asking me?
Can I add one more thing? So I think the problem I heard is that sometimes users want to really reach for help, so they use every possible way in the same time. I think that is not necessary, because people are monitoring, GitHub issues and mailing things, whatever. So just one source should be fine. I think. Do you agree with me? But I think that's something I heard also was problematic.
I can tell you what helps me personally when I see an issue with like a minimal config, how to reproduce and the steps to reproduce. That gives me a lot more motivation. Like instead of spending 30 minutes trying to figure out how to replicate, I can only spend 5. So try to minimal setup, how to replicate. That helps tremendously.
More questions?
We've got 4 more minutes.
Hi, thanks for Conf and organizing. If you can tell a few words about your motivations and drivers, why you are doing that.
Should we like do this as the closing question and just like from one side to the other? Ben, you start. So Ben, because you weren't listening, what's your motivation to work with Prometheus on Prometheus?
Yeah, so my motivation started with like going from Google, where we had crazy amounts of monitoring, to a small startup where like I asked how many requests per second are we getting and how many 500 errors are we getting, and I kind of got a and I said, wow, we should really fix that, and thankfully Julius was there fixing it.
For me, I started contributing to Prometheus when I was a student, and then I found all these amazing people helping me. So initially, when I opened my first PR, I remember like 10 different times I have to rewrite it, but now like maybe one time. So I mean, these guys have put a lot of effort into me, and they're super fun. I would always love to hang out with them. Yeah, and I get paid to do this. Yeah, and it like I get to do. I kind of know how to write a database now, maybe. Yeah, but that's like I learn a lot. It's super fun, and I get paid to do it, I guess.
Yeah, so for myself, it's kind of the same. I have the big opportunity to work for Red Hat. But I must say that for people that might be intimidated by the folks here on the stage, I'm the last one to join the team. So can just say that even if some of them you might find them a little bit sometimes harsh, they are all kind, definitely.
Yeah, pretty much the same for me as what's been said. I just really enjoy working with the group. It's super rewarding.
Red Hat is a great company, so they actually invest in me as a full-time Prometheus maintainer.
I think I started work on Prometheus because I was bored and didn't. No, I had to quit my job and I didn't know what to do. And then luckily, like Björn, Julius, Brian, kind of let me work on their code. So and now I get paid for it as well.
Well, I was at SoundCloud when, I mean, at times with Ben mentioned of like, we didn't really could answer these questions. And then like these ex-Googlers came and showed me like, hey, that's what you can actually do. And you can like answer all these questions. And then I started contributing. And now the code I'm writing helps like a lot of other people. And that's what me kept in the project besides like still working at SoundCloud.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a weird mix of sysadmin and programmer. And the way I work is very data driven. So I need working metrics monitoring to be able to do anything. So in a previous job at an unnamed company who had a certain metrics tool, I ended up being the person who commonly maintained the monitoring and saw all the pain points there. After leaving that company and going to a startup and evaluating all the options, it's looking at it's like, wow, it's 20 Nagios clones and 3 things that I might be able to build something from. An ex-coworker I ran into said, oh yeah, Bjorn's building something. And then I got involved in Prometheus.
Right, not much new to say. It's a very cool community. I'm learning quite a bunch, and distributed systems are very interesting, maybe.
Yeah, I also get paid for this, but why I think like I never wanted to do infrastructure, or at least I didn't go into my job wanting to do infrastructure, but I wanted to solve, I guess, real world problems. But turns out infrastructure was really awful, like 10 years ago at least. It's gotten a lot better, and turns out it's actually really interesting to work on all of these things. So yeah, that's why I'm still here 10 years into it.
From my side, I really like contributing to Prometheus and helping out because, well, I'm responsible for the monitoring team, monitoring kind of system in my company, in Probable, and basically, well, I depend on it. That's why I really like helping a lot there. But basically, why I'm motivated is because challenging. I really like hard problems, and in fact, the more harder the issue is, I like it more, even if it takes time. Yeah, I think open source is really good. It can, it has lots of advantage, and I'm really pushing forward that approach for my colleagues as well.
So in a previous life, I've been the only one picking up the pager for like 11 years without pause. So I know how monitoring actually like keeps people sane, how it allows them to have a family. That's why I care about this, and also, as cheesy as it sounds, leaving the world a better place.
Leaving the
world a better place.
Ah, okay. Thank you. Sorry, German accent. I started as a user of Prometheus. Was building a completely different thing. Needed to monitor it. Ex-Google, wanted something that looked like Borgmon. Found Prometheus, and then I was like, hey, this is really cool. I want some long-term storage for this, and there wasn't anything at the time, so we bought Cortex. And then these guys were kind enough to invite me into the dev team, and I kind of, ever since.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of open source. Like back in the days, politically, we preferred the term free software, and there was the whole thing. Oh, there's Tincho like, yeah, Libris software. Anyway, so that's been going on for decades, and I never imagined that I could be part of such a big open source software project myself. I always looked at these people like, oh, those are like the priests, and I don't think I will ever be part of that. But it happened by accident. Of course, the original motivation was to fix our production issues. Like we wanted to monitor SoundCloud, and of course we would make it open source if SoundCloud lets us. Yeah, so that was great. Nowadays, I mean, mostly I freelance helping companies use it and develop integrations and stuff like that, so that's less upstream. There the motivation is both fun and money. But I still do, I guess, like a lot of pull request reviews, community discussions, politics, and so on. And there, I mean, it's not always fun, but sometimes I was like, oh, but that is wrong, I need to, you're motivated by trying to keep your baby on the right track sometimes also. Yeah.
Break. So now we're going to break. There's still tons more swag over there. There's also a lot of beer coasters, which are like really popular, so just grab them. There's also more swag at the front desk. Grab that as well during the pause. And I think we will be seeing each other at 17 sharp. No, actually, let's say like 1600 5/8.